The first time you ever met Bakugou's parents, his father was kind enough. Mitsuki, however, barely spared you a glance before muttering something under her breath about how her son could do better. Katsuki had laughed it off at that time, wrapping an arm around your shoulder and pulling you closer. "Don't mind her," he whispered in your ear, his warm breath tickling it. "She's like that with everyone." But as time went on, it became glaringly obvious that she wasn't like that with everyone. She was like that with you. "Katsuki, are you really bringing them along again?" Mitsuki would sigh, arms crossed as she blocked the doorway. Her fiery demeanor mirrored Katsuki's, where his abrasiveness was underpinned by the genuine care. Hers felt cutting and almost cruel. "Yeah, I am," he snapped, shouldering past her and grabbing your hand to tug you inside. His grip was firm and almost protective. It made your stomach churn with ease. You hated this. You hated being the wedge that drove in between Katsuki and his family. You tried everything. You tried being overly polite, offering to help around the house, even bringing gifts, but nothing seemed to soften her steely gaze or the sharp tongue. "Maybe I shouldn't have come," you muttered under your breath as Katsuki got you to the living room. His ruby eyes softened as he glanced at you, but his jaw tightened. "Don't say that. You're with me, that's all that matters." You wanted to believe him. You wanted to trust your presence, that you wouldn't continue to strain his relationship with his mother, but as Mitsuki breezed past, muttering about how needy brats shouldn't monopolize her son's time, the guilt in your chest grew heavier. Later that night, Katsuki had gone to grab something from his old room, leaving you alone in the kitchen with Mitsuki. She was chopping vegetables with precision that almost felt threatening. The silence stretched thick and suffocating until she finally spoke. "You know you're holding him back." Your breath hitched. You turned to look at her, heart thudding in your chest. I'm sorry?" She didn't even look up, her knife slicing through the carrot with an audible thwack. "You heard me. Katsuki has a bright future ahead of him. He doesn't need someone like you weighing him down." Her words were like a dagger to your heart, each syllable driving deeper. You opened your mouth to respond and to defend yourself, but nothing came out. Mitsuki finally met your gaze. Her eyes were cold and calculating. "Do you really think you're good enough for him? He's gonna be a top hero for crying out loud. And you're just..." She gestured vaguely, as if your entire existence was insignificant. You clenched your fists, nails digging into your palms as you struggled to keep your concern. "I love him," you said quietly, your voice trembling. Mitsuki snorted. "Love doesn't pay bills or save lives. Katsuki needs someone who can keep up with him, who can push him to be better, not someone who drags him down." Before you could even respond, Katsuki walked back into the room, his eyes darting between the both of you. "What's going on?" he asked, his tone sharp. "Nothing," Mitsuki replies, her voice sickly sweet. "Just giving some advice." Katsuki's eyes narrowed and he stepped closer to you, his arm brushing against yours. "Don't listen to her," he whispered under his breath, but the damage was already done. That night you lay beside Katsuki in his childhood bed. You couldn't stop. You couldn't stop replaying the words that railed around your mind. Was she right? Were you holding him back? Katsuki deserved the world, and maybe you just couldn't shake the feeling that maybe you weren't enough. Katsuki drifted beside you, his arm draping around your waist as he pulled you closer. You're quiet," he murmured. His voice was husky with sleep. You hesitated, your voice tightening. "Katsuki, do you ever think I'm bad for you?" At that, his eyes snapped open. He propped up one elbow to look at you. "What the hell are you talking about?" Your mom," you whispered, barely being able to get the words out. She thinks I'm holding you back." Katsuki's expression darkened, his eyebrows furrowing. I don't care what she thinks. You're not holding me back. If anything, you make me better. But you try to interrupt. No, he cut you off, his voice firm. Don't do this. Don't let her get in your head. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm not gonna let her or anyone else make you think otherwise. His words brought tears to your eyes, and you blinked rapidly to keep them from falling. I don't want to come between you and your family. Katsuki sighed, his expression softening as he cupped your cheek with his calloused hand. You're not. If she can't see how amazing you are, that's her fucking problem, not yours. You nodded, but the doubt still lingered in the back of your mind. The next morning, as you and Katsuki prepared to leave, Mitsuki cornered you in the hallway. Katsuki was outside loading the car, leaving you alone with her once more. I hope you're happy, she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Katsuki's too stubborn to see it now, but one day he'll realize you're really not worth it. You swallowed hard, forcing yourself to meet her gaze. I love him, you said firmly, repeating your earlier words. Your voice was steadier than you expected, and I'm not going anywhere. Mitsuki's eyes narrowed for a moment. You thought she might actually say something, but she scoffed and walked away, leaving you standing there with a heart pounding in your chest. When you stepped outside, Katsuki was leaning against the car, waiting for you. He raised an eyebrow as you approached. She say something again? He asked. You hesitated and shook your head. It's nothing. He frowned, but clearly not believing you. But he decided not to press the issue. Instead, he opened the car door for you, his hand lingering on your back as you climbed inside. As the car pulled away from his parents' house, you glanced at Katsuki out of the corner of your eye. Despite everything, he looked so calm. His usual scowl softened into something so peaceful. Maybe Mitsuki would never appreciate you. Maybe she would never see you as a burden. But you could only hope that would be true one day. Because right now, she didn't accept you. She saw you as a burden, someone unworthy of her son, but as Katsuki reached over to take your hand, his grip was reassuring. You realized it didn't matter. The car ride away from Katsuki's childhood home was quiet. You could feel the tension radiating off of him. Even through his grip on your hand, it was steady, but the way his jaw clenched and his fingers occasionally tightened around you. He was thinking of his mother too. And you were thinking about her as well. Are you okay? He asked, slowly, but so sudden that it broke the silence. You hesitated. The instinct was to lie, to brush everything off, but you knew Katsuki well enough to know that he'd see through it. So you settled for half-truth. I'm fine, just, tired. He glanced at you, his crimson eyes narrowing slightly. You knew he didn't buy it, but he didn't push. Instead, he turned his focus to the road, his free hand tightening around the wheel. The ride stretched on, the weight of the unspoken words pressing down on you. By the time you reached the apartment, you felt like you couldn't breathe. Katsuki unlocked the door, stepping aside to let you in first. You hesitated in the entryway, but the warmth of his place in such a stark contrast from the cold, biting tension that had followed you from his parents' house. You hungry? He asked, kicking off his shoes and tossing the keys into the counter. No, I'm good. You shook your head. Thirsty? No. He frowned, watching as you made your way to the couch and sat down. You folded your hands in your lap as if you were somewhere important where you needed to be professional, and you just stared at them like they were holding all the answers to the questions swirling around in your head. Katsuki sighed, running a hand through his messy hair before sitting down. Talk to me, he said, his voice softer than you expected. You swallowed hard, debating on whether you should actually tell him or you could just avoid it. Do you ever think she's right? You said quietly. Katsuki stiffened beside you. What? Your mom, you clarified, still not meeting his gaze. Do you ever think she's right? About me? That I'm not good enough for you? Ugh, don't, he said sharply, his tone laced with frustration. Don't even start with that shit. I'm serious, Katsuki, you said, finally looking up at him. She's not wrong about some things. I mean, you're gonna be a top hero. You're amazing, and I'm just me. Katsuki's eyes blazed with anger, but it wasn't directed at you. He stood abruptly, pacing the length of his living room. You think I'd waste my time for someone who wasn't good enough? He snapped, gesturing wildly. Do you have any idea how picky I am? You blinked, taken aback by his sudden intensity, even though you probably should have been used to it by now. Katsuki, I didn't mean... No, he cut you off, turning to face you. You listen to me. I don't give a damn what my mom thinks. I don't care what anybody thinks. I chose you because you're exactly what I need. His words hung in the air, heavy with conviction. You opened your mouth to respond, but he wasn't done. You keep me grounded, he continued, his voice softening slightly. You don't let me get away with my crap, and you make me better, stronger. Katsuki, I'm not finished, he said, cutting you off again. He crossed the room and knelt in front of you, his hands resting on your knees. You're not just you. You're everything to me. Stop letting her get inside your head. All right? The intensity in his eyes made your heart ache. You wanted to believe him, but the doubts lingered like a shadow you couldn't shake. I just don't want to cause problems for you, you whispered. Katsuki sighed, his shoulders sagging slightly. You're not the problem. She is, he said firmly. And if she can't figure that out, then that's on her, not you. His hand slid up to cup your face, his thumbs brushing against your cheeks. I'm not going anywhere, and neither are you. Got it? You nodded, tears welling up in your eyes. Yeah, I got it. The next few days passed uneventfully, but Mitsuki's words still managed to linger in the back of your mind. You tried to push them aside, to focus on the life that you'd built with Katsuki, but that was much easier said than done. It wasn't until a week later when Katsuki's phone buzzed with this call from his mom the tension came rushing back. Great, he muttered, glaring at the screen. He answered reluctantly, his tone curt. What? You couldn't hear what Mitsuki was saying, but Katsuki scowled deepened with every passing second. Well, maybe you should keep your opinions to yourself, he snapped. I'm not gonna let you just stand here and talk your shit about them. Your stomach twisted and turned as you realized she was talking about you again. Yeah? Then don't call me until you can learn some damn respect, Katsuki said before hanging up and tossing his phone onto the couch. You stared at him, unsure of what to say. Katsuki? He turned to you, his expression softening when he saw the worry in your eyes. I'm done with her crap, he said firmly. If she can't accept you, then she can deal with not seeing me. Oh, Katsuki, I don't want to come between the two of you, you said, your voice barely above a whisper, guilt eating you alive. You're not, he insisted, sitting down beside you, taking your own hand. She's doing that all on her own. You looked at him, searching his face for any sign of doubt, but when all you saw was determination. She'll come around, he said. His tone was softer now. And if she doesn't, shit, that's her loss, not mine. For the first time in days, you felt a flicker of hope. Katsuki's unwavering support was enough to remind you that, no matter what, or what his mom thought, you belonged at his side. And if Mitsuki couldn't see this, then you'd have to disappoint her together. Because Katsuki had chosen you, and you weren't going to let anyone take that away. The next time Mitsuki called you, you expected the usual tension to bubble before Katsuki glanced at you once more. He answered. His expression was hard to explain. What? He asked, leaning against the counter. Her voice carried through the phone. It was muffled, but unmistakably sharp. Katsuki's expression hardened as he listened, his gaze starting to you. You couldn't make out her exact words, but it was clear that she was calling to apologize. Yeah, well, you don't get to decide who's good enough for me, he said, his voice firm but controlled. You had your say, and I'm done listening. There was a pause, and you wondered if she had hung up, but then Katsuki added, and if you can't be respectful, then you can't respect me. End of story. He hung up without another word, his shoulders relaxing. That's it? You asked hesitantly. That's it, he confirmed, walking over to you, his hands found yours, holding them tightly as he crouched to meet your gaze. I'm not letting her or anybody think that they can make you feel like they don't belong in your life. You hear me? You nodded, tears brimming in your eyes. I hear you. Good, he said, softly pressing a kiss to your forehead. Because you're stuck with me, and I'm not letting you go.